Hello, and welcome to Appleton Engaged. I'm your host, Timber Smith, DEI coordinator for the city of Appleton.
And I'm Andy, and I'm the communications manager for the city.
And Appleton Engaged is a podcast that explores the many people, organizations, and resources that make our community a great place to live, work, and play. So whether you're a longtime resident or just getting to know Appleton, join us as we learn more about our community together.
This is an exciting episode because it's a City of Appleton special episode. And with this being the election year, we have a department which is completely concentrated on that part of the system. So can you give us an introduction of who our guest is?
Oh, most definitely. I'm really excited about this episode because what we're going to learn is not only do they do the work to make sure that our residents of Appleton are able to vote, but there's many other things that actually this department happens to do. And I think we're going to be surprised at the amount of work. And this is an awesome team. I get to walk past them every morning as I head in to do my job. And it's just an amazing team that really serves the people of Appleton well. So this week's guest is Cammie Lynch, city clerk for the city of Appleton. Hey, Cammie, how's it going?
Hey, going well.
Awesome. You ready to jump in?
Yes, let's do it.
Hey, okay. Can you please tell us about yourself and your association with Appleton and the Fox Cities region?
Yeah, so I am the city clerk for the city of Appleton. I've been with the city of Appleton for about 9 years as the city clerk. Before that, I was the city clerk for the city of Verona. It's kind of like a suburb of Madison for 5 years. So been doing this a while. I'm originally from just outside of Oshkosh. So Appleton's kind of home for me. And honestly, I always admired Appleton as a city, especially when I got into the local government and was like, wouldn't it be cool if I could move back closer to home someday? Wouldn't it be awesome if there was a position open as the city clerk in Appleton? And when there was, I found it and I jumped on it, and here I am.
Oh, you know what? That's pretty cool. So you totally pulled a boomerang, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
We hear that often here on Appleton Engaged. You got to go out there and check out the rest of the world or Wisconsin, but this is a pretty awesome place to be.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, Cammie, can you please tell us about your resource?
Yeah, so as the city clerk, I do a variety of different things. A lot of people think when they ask me, so what do you actually do? It's a long list, and it's some things that people have heard about and some things that they have no idea of what I do. So I go to all the city council meetings. I'm the record keeper for the city. So all of the actions of the common council, I'm responsible for keeping records of those and letting people know where they are when they're looking for them as a resource. I do a lot of licensing, alcohol licensing. We have a variety of different licenses and permits for special events. Also do the city's board of review. So I'm in charge of running that process and making it happen. And the city's board of review is when property owners can object to their property assessments. I know you've talked to our city assessor before when we went through the revaluation.
Yes.
So I'm making that meeting happen and talking to residents so that they know what their options are to object to their property assessment.
All right. So here's what I kind of heard. I heard that, for one, you're kind of like the city's memory because you're keeping all of these records, right? As the city, particularly if you're keeping council records, those are like all of the actions that our city has decided to make, whether for permitting or whatever we do as Appleton, right? So you keep those records.
Exactly.
And you know when they've happened. All right, that's pretty awesome. And then also, if people want to have some type of special event, they work with your office.
Yes. Yeah. So we guide them through the process. I'm currently looking at how we can make that process better. But special events are a really important part of our community. And so we are here to make sure that they're done safely and so that there's just the process can be executed both for the organizer and for the city, so we have resources to support the event.
There's something I heard you mention earlier where you said you were actually hired as the city clerk. And not all places do that. Some places actually vote their city clerks in, correct?
Correct.
So why is it different in Appleton? Or maybe actually this is the way most places do it, and why is it different in other places?
Yeah, so the city clerk, it's one of the oldest positions in government, going way back to ancient times. And throughout the progression of the role, for a while it was really common for the city clerk to be an elected position. So it would be voted in. And most municipalities have gotten away from that. So a lot of clerks are, appointed or hired. At the county level, most county clerks are still elected, so they're voted on.
So, Cami, I'm curious, what kind of qualification you need to become a city clerk?
Well, I think it's different for every municipality. For me, I did go to school and got my bachelor's in public administration with a minor in small city analysis. I knew I wanted to work for a municipality. And then just over time being in the role, I'm a Wisconsin certified municipal clerk. So I've gone through the State Municipal Clerks Institute and then just done a variety of trainings and things to get that certification. And I also hold my master's degree in public administration, just something I wanted to go back and do. But it's different for every municipality what the qualifications are.
Awesome. And not many people know that it's an all-women run show, so that's why I'm very proud of this department. And can you tell us what a typical day looks like for your department?
Yeah, so a typical day is a day where you don't know what's going to happen. And as long as you're okay with that.
You said there's no typical
is
to your
fine.
typical day.
Exactly. Yeah, there's routine things. So, for example, we had a common council meeting last night. So I knew my morning is going to be doing the minutes for the council meeting, but I don't know who's going to call, what questions they're going to have about something else, a license that we're doing. Or we had a special events committee staff meeting today too. So what happens in there? You just have to be able to pivot. But of course, there's structure and things that need to be done. One thing that we didn't touch on yet as part of what I do, but I think a lot of people do know that the city clerk does this part is elections. So right now, very, very much into the election mode, preparing for the partisan primary election.
Okay. And yes, I think that is, if they don't know anything else, I think our public knows that like the clerk's office definitely handles elections. We recently had a thing with maps change, right? Did that affect your department, and how did it affect your department?
Yeah, so we had redistricting for the third time. I don't know if that's ever happened before where we've gone round and round and round. But the state legislative district maps, the districts themselves changed. So that was kind of in the spring of this year. So it was up to my department to figure out how our maps for our wards and aldermanic districts could accommodate those Senate and Assembly district changes. So we had to create new wards. And what a ward is, it's called a block of population where all of their voting districts are the same. That block of population's in the same school district, the same county, the same assembly district, Senate district, congressional district, all of that. So we had to create some more wards to accommodate these different assembly and Senate districts that were created and have new maps. Our aldermanic district boundaries didn't change. It's just we had more wards because when you show up at your polling place, yourself and your neighbor down the road, you might not have the same ballot because one of you might be in this assembly district and the other one's in this assembly district. So that's what those wards are, to determine that you get the proper ballot to vote for who represents you. So that was a big process for us, and we gained about 6 more wards as a result of that.
So with the elections coming, what kind of preparations you are in, and what kind of things you want to let our audience know while you are doing these preps?
Yeah, so the partisan primary election, I personally think it's one of the most confusing elections that we have, and it only happens every 2 years in August, so it's just kind of a weird time for an election. It used to be in September, then they moved it up to August. people aren't really fully in election mode in the summer, I feel like. But also it's a partisan primary. So the purpose of this election is to narrow down the candidates to represent each party in the November election. So for the partisan primary, voters can only vote in one party's primary. And that can be confusing for voters, especially in Wisconsin, because we're not a state where you have to party identify when you register to vote. You just register to vote as a human being who wants to vote. And then you get this ballot and you are a little bit boxed into, who you want to vote for. You can only vote in that one party. So it's confusing for people. It's also just a giant ballot because we have a lot of parties. So it's longer, it's two-sided. So it can be a little bit intimidating. So for those reasons, the partisan primary is always just like, oh gosh, this election has so much more to it.
I got mine and I was like, whoa, that's a lot of options. What is particularly different in a presidential election year? Like because to me, it just seems like a lot more people would vote. So I'm sure like whatever the preparations are for this particular time to vote, there's got to be I'm sure there's something different about it.
Yeah, so just the sheer number of people that we expect to turn out. The presidential election year is always busier, more voter turnout. Some voters don't vote in the local elections and only vote in the federal ones. So the sheer number just creates a greater workload based on that alone. So more people voting absentee ballots. Voters, there's such thing as like a permanently overseas voter. So those are U.S. citizens that have moved outside of the country. So let's say they moved to Canada. They're still eligible to vote in just the federal offices. So we have a lot more of, they can't participate in the local elections, but for these, the presidential or federal offices, those ballots go out. The time frame is longer for federal elections for absentee ballots, so we have to send our ballots out a lot sooner. So our ballots went out at the end of June for the August 13th partisan primary. So right now, we're getting those absentee ballots back, and we're still sending some out as we get some back.
So during these kind of preparation, do you hire more people just to help you with the workload for a seasonal time period, or no, it's your team does it all?
Mostly the team does it all, but we do have a group of phenomenal election workers. So those are the people that you see at the polls when you go on election day. They help us as needed, so they'll come in and work for a few hours if we need help, with just like filing the absentee ballots into their appropriate, ward slot. Or if for the November election, in-person absentee voting is really popular, so they'll come in and help work that process because we have a whole station and a whole setup just to get voters in and out and in a convenient way that's not too jam-packed in with so many people. So our election inspectors are our help both on election day and for pre and even some post-election activities.
What is a myth or a misunderstanding you think people have about the voting process or what the clerk's office does as far as voting?
Just one?
You can share more than one.
I feel like there's a lot of misinformation around elections, especially more recently. And, some of it might be malicious and some of it's just a misunderstanding because somebody's never done that process before. So I guess one is surrounding absentee ballots. We have, in Wisconsin, you don't have to have an excuse to vote an absentee ballot. If it works better for you to get your ballot mailed to your home, that's okay. So you just have to request it, provide a copy of your photo ID, and then it gets mailed back to us. Those absentee ballots, I guess what happens? I think there's a lot of questions around voting absentee for those that haven't done it before. So when we get those ballots back, we first check to make sure that envelope, that certification on the envelope is complete.
Right.
And then we mark it as returned. So then it shows that voter's ballot made it back to us. We sort it in the ward slot so that it goes to the proper polling place later. It stays in our secure vault until Election Day. Those ballots are processed at the polling place.
Oh, so they're actually, so you hold them and then they get transported to where the ward is where the voting happens or should happen.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And then
Wow.
our election inspectors process those absentee ballots on Election Day while they're also facilitating in-person voters on Election Day.
Well, I definitely didn't know that. And I bet a lot of people didn't know that.
Yeah, some people, when they bring their ballot back or they're inquiring about it, they say, what happens to my ballot? That's what happens is we review the outside, make sure it's okay, store it here until Election Day where it's sent to the polls, and then opened, checked in so that voter's given credit for voting on what we use are the Badger books, and then that ballot is fed through the tabulator at the polling place on Election Day.
So, Cami, a lot of people are now becoming citizens like this year, or maybe they have become citizens last year. So, what do you have to say to those people who will be exercising their right for the first time? Is there a website they should go on and educate themselves ahead of time?
Yeah, so they would need to register to vote. Any voter needs to register before they're able to vote, whether it's absentee or at the polls. The state's website, it's myvote.wi.gov, is a phenomenal resource for you can register to vote online through next Wednesday. That's the open registration period. After next Wednesday, voters have to come into our office to register to vote. But that has resources of what's required to register. You can do it online if your address is updated with your Wisconsin driver's license or ID card. If you don't have one of those, then you might have to mail in your form or come in to us. But you have to register first, but that will show anyone where their polling place is, how to get an absentee ballot. If they want to request one through that website, they're able to do so. So that's a great resource. And then also our City of Appleton elections page. So under City Clerk elections, voting information, we have a ton of information and links to the My Vote site for various things. So our deputy clerk has done a really good job of putting that information out there and keeping it up to date as things change.
One thing that I don't think I heard you mention yet, but I actually get to see it in action is like early voting, when people actually come to City Hall and vote. How does that work? Just because I've seen people up here actually at City Hall, and I've seen the team out there helping people go through their voting process. I mean, it's pretty awesome to watch in action. How does early voting work?
Yeah, so one caveat, we don't have true early voting in Wisconsin. So that's why we call it in-person absentee voting.
Okay.
It's a longer way to say early voting, but it's not true early voting because it's still an absentee ballot that goes in the envelope once it's voted.
Got it.
It's not put in a machine or cast.
Okay.
But we have that. It'll be starting for the August partisan primary on Tuesday, July 30th. And it's just an option for voters to come in and cast their ballot here at City Hall. There's no appointment necessary. They can come in and just let us know here to vote absentee. We see their photo ID, and then they get their ballot. Here at City Hall, we use our express vote machines, which are essentially giant printers. So they get a blank card that is inserted into the express vote. They make their selections on the screen. We love our express vote machines because you can't screw up. So you're making selections. It doesn't let you overvote. It warns you if you didn't vote for enough candidates, and then it'll print your selections on that sheet of paper, which is now your ballot, and that is put in an envelope, sealed, signed, and then stored until Election Day. And I think voters like it because I think they like the interaction with all of us. We're wonderful people. We love voting. So we love to help them out and interact. And also if they have a question on their ballot or, while they're here, then we can answer that question for them.
Is there a story that will help listeners understand the importance of your department?
Yeah, I have a great story. Well, actually, when it happened, it didn't seem great. But now reflecting back, it was a win for all of us. So the last election that we had was the spring election in April, spring election and presidential preference vote. And the spring election was not telling at all that it was spring just because the name spring was in it. That was when we had the blizzard here in Appleton.
I remember
And
that.
it was wild. The weather conditions changed quickly. I mean, there was a lot of heavy snow, but then the snow picked up, roads got bad, power lines were hit and went down all over, and we had a polling place lose power around 4 in the afternoon. Voting, the polls are open until 8 p.m. And our election workers are there. I mean, we're here at City Hall by 6 a.m. on Election Day. The election workers are at their polling places by 6:30 a.m. And they're there all day until they're finished. And so 4 p.m., power's out. It's a really, on a typical day, that's when things start getting busy as people are showing up to vote after work. The weather did kind of change people's plans with that. But that was my biggest fear, is losing power at a polling place, because we have to stay open. We can't just say, actually, we're closed. Voters need the opportunity. So they have to adapt, our election workers. We realized that we had some not so great flashlights that we had sent them. So we have since upgraded our flashlights. They didn't provide a whole lot of light, the ones we had. But then it was just getting our emergency procedures in place. Without power, we couldn't use our Badger books, our electronic poll books. So we have backups of paper poll books. So having all of that material sent to the polling place, making sure they had enough light to operate, and then just supporting them as questions arise. And voters were really patient while the transition happened. You make sure your numbers match, because all of your electronic numbers are stored on the machines. Our tabulators, which process the ballots, they do have battery backups, so they're able to be up and running. But it was making decisions of, do we keep it up and running, hoping that it comes back, or do we use the auxiliary bin and then plug it in and process later? So it was a lot of coordination, but it all turned out fantastic. The election workers were really resilient. We had support from the fire department as well. They dropped by just to check on things, bring more lights, to stand by at the close of polls in case generator power was needed. And everything turned out okay. And all of our election workers, after the close of polls, they have to come back and bring all of their materials to City Hall here. So our election workers were driving through the nasty storm with, with election supplies, but they all, made it okay. And we got all of our supplies and all of our numbers matched up. And it was like, hey, we can have an election in the dark and the cold. It's fine.
I've never thought about that. Like, if you lose power, you still got to carry on the election. You just can't postpone it till another day or something.
Correct. And if there's any time that voting couldn't happen, like for a duration of time, we would have to petition the courts then to allow us to extend the polling hours, because all voters need to have that amount of time to be able to cast a ballot. So we didn't run into that scenario, but I know if in other severe weather scenarios where, you're perhaps alternating a location and going to an emergency location, then the hours might have to be extended. So that's my next biggest fear, but we'll deal with it when it arises.
Hopefully it will never arise. Is there any upcoming initiatives or events, opportunities?
Yeah, so I mentioned we have in-person absentee voting for the August partisan primary that starts on July 30th. So that's when voters can come into City Hall to cast an absentee ballot. They can be requesting ballots now up until the Thursday before the election. And then after the August partisan primary, we will be soliciting more election workers. So if people are interested and want to get involved, we'll have the job posting open for election inspectors probably mid to late August in preparation for the November election.
So where this information will be available, will it be pushed out to the social media pages of the city and other places as well?
Yeah, so the job posting, it's just through our job opportunities on the city website, but we can definitely make sure that that's shared on our social media pages to encourage individuals to apply. If people are worried about, seeing it, they can certainly call our office and let us know, hey, I want to be an election worker. We'll put them on a list and we'll let them know when it's open.
Before we started recording, we were having a conversation. And how many registered voters do we have here in Appleton?
We hover around 40,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So and it fluctuates because people are moving in or out of the city. It kind of grows as we prepare for a presidential election, and then after that we go through and do our voter maintenance, and sometimes it changes. But yeah, around 40,000 and a population of around 75,000. That's pretty good. And
Yeah,
we have
so more than half.
yeah, and we have great voter turnout here in Appleton.
No doubt. If people want to learn more about the many things that the clerk's office does, where can they reach out?
Yeah, so they can stop in here to City Hall. They can call us. If you Google City of Appleton, it's the city clerk's office phone number that comes up. It's 920-832-6443. We can answer any questions they have about what we do, about elections, and then check out our website pages too. We have a lot of information on there.
Is there anything the community can do to be helpful?
I would say if they don't want to serve as an election inspector, if they are hearing rumors or things about any process, whether it's elections or any of our licensing things, they can reach out and ask us, because we can provide the correct information, and that way they have it and they can share that.
Is there any additional information at this time that you feel is important for the Appleton Engaged listeners to know that maybe we didn't ask a question about?
I think we covered mostly all of it. I could talk about elections for days. I know nobody has that much time, but I guess I would just, again, reiterate, if there is a question that comes up that a listener has, call us, email us, and we'll help get them the answer. Because especially around elections, there's a lot of kind of little nuances or unknown information, and we're happy to point them in the right direction.
Is there a general email for the clerk's office?
They can use the contact us email, and that goes through the general email. I'll get that, and then I can forward it to any one of us in the department to respond.
Okay.
If it's an election-specific question, we have the election clerk at appleton.org
Okay.
email.
Awesome.
So it's time for a shout out, and normally I don't give shout out and I let the guest do the shout out, but my shout out goes to Cami and her team, because I am, as a communications manager, have seen firsthand how much they work hard every day, especially during those days where the entire city is gone, but they are here working so that system keeps running. So shout out to you and your team.
Well, I second that, because a lot of people don't know they don't go home until it's done.
Yes, thank you for that. And huge shout out to the team, to Lindsay, Abby, Amy, and soon our new individual, our new elections clerk, Becca. I'm really excited for her to join us. We have a fantastic team. We work really hard, and we're here to service our voters, our constituents. Another shout out I would like to give is to our election inspectors, all of them that are willing to put in. They have the long days on election day for those that work all day, and all the preparations, the questions, the intensity of trying to get everything done, and especially our chief election inspectors. So since we have 15 polling places, the 5 of us in the office can't be in 15 places at once. Our chief inspectors are the ones that are in charge of each polling place and make sure everything runs smoothly.
Okay. Cami, thank you. At this time, we're going to start wrapping up this episode. Appleton Engaged listeners, we want to say thank you for spending time with us, giving us your minds and ears, caring about an important resource in our community. I can't stress how important this particular resource is, because what's more important than voting? We are a work in progress. We are always trying to become a better podcast. We're trying to become the #1 podcast in Northeast Wisconsin, but we can't do it alone. We need your help. So please feel free to reach out to us. Let us know if there's any improvements we can do, if there's any new questions you would like us to ask our guests, if you would like to be a guest, if you would like to recommend a guest. Don't hesitate to reach out to us at diversity@appleton.org. Once again, that is diversity@appleton.org. One other thing that we could really use your help with, We're trying to get in front of more eyes and ears here in Appleton, and the way to do that is through analytics. So we just need you to take a moment when you're listening to this podcast and hit that subscribe button or hit the ratings button and give us 5 stars. Don't give us 4 stars, give us 5 stars. Or leave us a review. These things help to improve our analytics, and the better the analytics, the more eyes and ears get to learn about this amazing resource known as Appleton Engaged.
Thank you so much, Cami. And to all our listeners, please, please, please go to the website and learn more about your exercising the right to vote. It's an important year, so it's important that you are informed and you get the right information. So in case you have any doubts, please call the email or the number she just shared with all of you. And until next time, stay thoughtful, stay curious, and stay engaged.